But every once in a while, I wanna talk about me, I wanna talk about number one. Oh my, me, my, what I think, what I like, what I know, what I want, what I see. I like talking about you usually, but occasionally I wanna talk about me. I wanna talk about me.
Oh, that would be Dan Radio style. You know, I couldn't really think of a better song for egotistical, egotism, egotastic. I'm not sure what I'm going to call this yet, but I have a funny feeling I'm going to like some morphage of the word ego thrown with some other bit of stuff. Anyway, so Dan Radio style, I wanted to thank you for joining me. And I am, a lot of things are going on really great in life, so I thought I would try to sneak in a quick show while I had the time. So thank you for joining me on Dan Radio style. Please share this channel. Please subscribe. Whatever. Just subscribe. Even if you don't like what I have to talk about, it just helps. It's helping in the big picture get my numbers up, and then the more subscribers I have, the more possibilities things can happen. So, you know, it helps. And if you'd like to communicate to me, please do so. Spirit Radio Dan Style at gmail.com. That's right. So that's the business. I want to talk about me. Toby Keith, I think that is. I'm not a big country fan, but I think that song is funny. And I kind of like it. So what the hell? There you go. That's how that goes. So today I'm doing a quick thing on ego. It's just funny because there's been a lot of I don't want to say bombarding because one, ego is something that I've been very like cognizant of for a long time. So I don't feel like this is necessarily something that's showing itself to me because I'm out of control, even though I think there is a little truth to that right now, just because there's been some I'm proud of myself for accomplishing a certain something, and I think I've been sharing it with people that I probably don't give a crap, frankly. And I'm just so stoked, and I want to like tell everybody and yell it from the rooftops, and that's probably not the best thing to do. So there's a little truth to it, but for the most part, I'm like aware of it and I'm seeing it. But ego's a very interesting thing, and like I said, a lot of demonstrations of this have been happening around me, how oftentimes if we're not really paying attention, if we're not careful, ego can very quickly kind of take charge and take advantage of our current situation. Now, again, ego is kind of a good thing. I don't want to like necessarily bag it. I really truly think the key is learning to balance the two, but most importantly for a lot of people, it's just acknowledging when it's actually present. So ego, as defined, is a person's sense of self-esteem or self-importance. I think that's the important part. It can also be the part of the mind that mediates between the conscious and the unconscious and is considered responsible for the reality testing and a sense of personal identity. So those are the places where the definition, if you will, is what starts to get us in trouble. When we have that sense of self-importance, when we somehow think we are somehow better than others in any way, shape, or form, that's really where the ego starts to come into play. We are, seriously, all the same. We really, truly are. Some of us maybe in different situations and maybe have different jobs and maybe have different levels of income and maybe live in different countries, right? But ultimately, we're all people living the struggle. So, you know, you're trying to figure out what fancy restaurant you're maybe going to have for dinner versus maybe some other person that's trying to figure out what scraps am I going to find in the trash to eat tonight. You know, ego is where you look at it and go, I'm better than you. That is when we start to get ourselves in trouble. Ego is something that we really need to pay attention to because in a lot of cases, it can be damaging to relationships. Certainly in the case of man and woman, kind of that sort of relationship, because friendship's a relationship too, and I'm going to talk about that. So like man-woman relationship, sometimes when you've got this sense of you should behave a certain way because I'm worth it, or you should realize that I feel this way and therefore should change your behaviors, or you need to understand how perfect. A lot of these comments will typically start off with you when you're in a relationship with somebody, even a friend, and you're like pointing at them going, this is what the problem is. Okay, one, generally, whenever you point a finger at somebody, you've got three pointing back at you, and it's beautiful when you catch yourself doing it and really start to pay attention to it. You start to get some great insight into what you need to work on as a person. Because all these things you're pointing at, the three fingers pointing back at you, it's like, do you ever do that? And if your answer is, yeah, hello, stop criticizing person you're pointing at because you are just as bad. Stop it. People that live in glass houses, right? Do not throw stones, should not throw stones, whatever. Don't chuck rocks when you live in a glass house, okay? There's reasons why we have phrases like this, So that is something to kind of keep in mind when we're trying to, one, better ourselves, of course, but be a good example to others, like your kids and everything else, right? You want to make sure that you're not always the person that's kind of reaching out and telling others what they should be doing. Ultimately, it comes down to us. Pay attention to ego. Pay attention to that part of us that is basically self-judging and often judges others. And I think that's probably the last little piece of this that I really want to kind of bring attention to, is the fact that oftentimes this is the part of us that keeps us from our dreams when we're trying to manifest, to kind of bring up something that's a very big deal to me, is the whole concept of manifesting. One, are we worth it? We're worthy. I've talked about that before. But the self-judgment's the part that actually will start to sabotage you. You may be going for a raise. You may be going for a relationship with someone that's like perfect. But then you start to do those things where, well, things never work out, and this person probably is not going to be attracted. She'll probably realize I'm shallow. All these self-defeating things that we say to ourselves. Again, ego. So it's not just the thing that pats you on the back and said, dude, you are way better than that person over there. Way better. That person sucks. You rock star. Right? But it's also the part of us that sabotages things, that beats us up, that says, this can't work, this can't last. Or there's no way I'll get that job. The raise is way, way more than I'm making right now. There's no way they're going to pay me that kind of money. The ego is... And it can be a very good thing, because originally when it came into play, it had a lot to do with us paying attention to our surroundings and getting amped up when something was scary and needed us to react. Those moments, not nearly as often, because we don't have saber-toothed tigers attacking us right anymore. That's pretty, unless you're at the zoo and you're lame and an animal's running loose and you're like, oh, look at Kitty, and you go run over to it and get mauled because you're a tard. Well, okay. Darwin wins, in that case. But we don't have a whole lot of those issues coming around our lives. But there are times, crossing the street and you're aware of the fact that there's car noises and you're like, oh, car, I almost got killed. That would have sucked, right? There are times where our little senses kick into play, and our, quote, little ego that's very aware of our identity and where we're at and what we're doing, and self-reflective practices like, I am about to get hit by a car. Whoa, owner of body, stop. It works. But there also is a lot of dangerous and damaging times. If you're having issues with other people because you've got some sort of they're not good enough, that's your ego. If you've got some sort of situation where you're trying to do something and you're telling yourself you're not good enough, that's your ego. So let's pay attention to the ego. The ego is a huge thing, and we need to learn just to hear it. Learn to pay attention to it. That's all. From there, you can make a lot of progress. And I'm not trying to harp, I'm not trying to say anything, but for a lot of us, it's just noticing, like, hey, where's our ego coming into play? How big a part is it playing these days? What is it keeping me from? What is it possibly damaging? What fights am I having on a regular basis because of my ego? Who am I constantly pointing out and saying, that person over there? You. Who's doing that? What is it? Because that's what you need as a person. I need as a person. We need to learn. And it's one of the great ways that we mirror our issues onto ourselves. Again, I've talked about how everything that happens to us is us, right? I'm going to keep saying this crazy stuff because it's the crazy stuff I believe, And eventually I'll have my mass of listeners that are like, dude, I can't believe this guy. And, I don't blame you. It's crazy. But yes, right? That's how this all works. It's very powerful, very profound. And when we can make these differences in our lives and make these changes and get our energies in the right direction, our abilities to manifest, our abilities to notice what's going on, how we're a part of everything, that everything's reflected back on us, how we become very aware of our role in life. Why are we here? That's really a question I think everybody needs to answer for themselves. Why are you here? You can say it's random. You can say we get one life. Whatever you believe. But why? Is it totally like accident? Nothing means anything? Okay, cool. If you're like on that, that's pretty extreme, right? I know people like that. Or are you like, I don't know, God stuck me here to raise pigeons for people so they can have their little notes delivered. I don't know, whatever. And you're on that side of the spectrum. Fantastic. Or you're like, I don't know, 80% of us that are like somewhere in the middle. These are the questions we need to figure out. And the ego is really the part of us that kind of interacts with that. That's like, I don't know, it's the difference between physical and spiritual. Like that's the connector between the two, I think. I don't know. That's just pop off the top of the head. So, anywho, Dan Radio Style. I probably talk longer than I should, but whatever the case is, I hope you enjoyed. I think ego's key, so we really, really need to pay attention to what it's telling us and what we're experiencing from it, and see what happens from there. We'll go from there. All right, Dan Radio Style. Please subscribe. Please share if you like this. If you got a friend, just go like, dude, check this guy out. He's all right. You know, like it just helps. It's a really helpful thing, and they might subscribe. And of course, reach out to me if you'd like to at spiritradiodanstyle@gmail.com. Appreciate it. Thank you so much, and I'll do something soon. I've got a couple other show ideas that I've been writing down lately, so we'll see what comes up. Who knows? It's a crazy world.